All right, Percy King speak. All right, what we're going to talk about today is the CJA panel. I spoke about it before, which is the Federal Criminal Justice Act. What that is private attorneys who sign up with the federal government in order to take federal criminal cases. Now, approximately 90% of people cannot afford to actually hire their own attorney for a federal criminal case because it costs. I can tell you that for the most part, almost any federal criminal case that you would try to hire me for is six figures on up. And the harder the case or the more involved it is, the more it will cost. So like I said, about 90% of people can't actually afford to hire somebody. So because of that, there are two ways you actually get a lawyer. Both of them are free. You just have to meet the guidelines, and it's several times what the poverty level is, and you just can't have an awful lot of assets that you could sell in order to pay for a lawyer. Now, here's the thing. The first line of defense would be the federal assistant federal defenders. I'm a former assistant federal defender in the Middle District of Florida. However, we could only take one criminal defendant in a specific case. So if there's multiple defendants, we could only have one of them so that the others would need to have lawyers. And if they couldn't afford it, you have to write to counsel. So then you would get somebody from the CJA panel that the court would appoint for you and the government would pay. Now, the other thing is that if there's conflicts, so that means that if the office had represented somebody who is going to be, a witness against you or somebody that, conflicts with your case, then no, the office can't, handle you at all. Now, here's the problem with all of this. Now, the CJA panel, of course, the government doesn't pay as much money. I'm not exactly sure what it is now because I'm not on the panel anymore. But I want to say it's somewhere around $145 to $150 an hour, whereas the normal cost is anywhere from $400 to a few $1,000 an hour, for a real good federal criminal defense attorney. But when you look at that, that's still some money. There are caps to that, and if you actually need to go beyond that cap, and you have to go to whatever court of appeal in order to get more money. I remember when I was on it, I think the cap was somewhere around $13,000-$14,000 for a case, or $15,000. But then you go to 11th Circuit if you had trials and other stuff, and you can end up getting more money. But here's the problem. I reported before that back on July 3rd, the panel ran out of money, and they were waiting until the new fiscal year, which was supposed to be, here in October, and that didn't happen. So there's no funding. So that means that these lawyers who don't actually get paid until either after the case is done, or they'll get what you call interim payments, because for the most part, even a short federal criminal defense case, when a person, wants to plead, guilty quickly, which is normally at least a month after you get the case, it still would take anywhere from 5 to 6 months, but most of them take a year plus. So that means that you have to wait for the most part to get your money till after they have been sentenced. Now, like I said, you can get some interim payments. If the case is a longer case, you're asking for some because you just can't wait for years to get your money. Whereas on a normal case, you have to pay me 100% up front. If I charge you, $50,000, I charge you, $250,000, you have to pay it up front. How you get it's how you get it. You sell your house, you mortgage your house, whatever you need to do. They ran out of money for the CJA panel. So there are lawyers who take a lot of these cases, and a lot of their caseload are these cases. And because I can tell you at 2019 going into 2020, when I went back and became an assistant federal defender as COVID was starting, I still had vouchers outstanding that needed to be paid. They still owed me, for 4 vouchers. Government had $50,000 of my money they were holding on to, and finally ended up getting paid. But there are lawyers who are still taking these cases that may have 6 figures worth of money that they're waiting on. Now, here's the problem. And the problem is that even when they actually do get a budget passed, they're going to owe so much money that they may blow through the entire year's worth of budget as soon as this money comes up, and then they don't have any money moving forward. because the federal courts have been asking for a lot more money. Because they need more money, they actually need more judges. They need to be able to, pay these lawyers that, are taking these cases, and they don't have that. So that's the problem. What's going to happen? All these federal criminal defendants, they're waiting in jail. They're not going to have lawyers. The federal defenders, there's not even close to enough of them in order to take these cases, so that there's going to be a constitutional crisis when it comes to the right to counsel. We need to talk about this. Tell me what you think about it. Like, share. We need to get this out there so that we can try to get the court some money. Because I want you to think about this as well. All of the different things that people believe that President Trump is doing that's illegal right about now. And since he's been president again, from firing people to, cutting contracts to making law firms work for him in the White House for free, to, defaming people, to doing all these different things, the United States is going to end up in court having to defend these things. How is our court system going to handle that? They can't even come close to handling what they have now. Can you imagine the thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of cases that can be filed just based upon the stuff that has already occurred in his first 10 months in office? Now, here's some of the cause of action that I'm looking at. Administrative Procedure Act, Federal Tort Claims Act, Equal Protection and Due Process Issues, Fair Labor Standards Act, Back Pay Act, Contract Disputes Act, Whistleblower Protection Act, Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII, False Claims Act, and the Freedom of Information Act. There's so many different cases that can be filed. Some of them may try to wait as long as the statute of limitations last until, Trump gets out of office. Some of them need to be filed, but they won't be finished until after he gets out of office. Can you imagine the amount of money that the government's going to have to pay out? And I didn't even start talking about all the things that ICE is doing. ICE is taking down American citizens. They don't have the authority to do that. People not going into people's houses. They're breaking and entering. They're doing so many different things that are illegal. The amount of lawsuits that this government is going to have to pay out, which is you and I, is going to be astounding. I don't even know where the money is going to come from, because they're going to lose. The federal government is going to lose so many different cases. And not only that, there's so many people who are leaving being assistant U.S. attorney because they don't like what's going on. They're losing a lot of their good talent. Some people are just barely holding on. It's going to be not too difficult to win some of these cases because they're not going to have people there. And there are a lot of people who, are you going to trust to work for the government again, knowing what a president can do? Don't know. Like I said, when you talk about this, like, share, comment, subscribe, and we'll talk soon.